I have a few questions for you.
Shoot.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about how over the years, like we start to do certain things, and then we go away from that, and then we might go back to it. So, for instance, I have like my camera backpack, right? Then I switched over to a Pelican for a while, and then I switched back over to a backpack. I noticed you went from a backpack to a Pelican, and are you going to go back to a backpack?
I don't think so.
No.
I really like the Pelican.
What do you prefer about using like a Pelican versus backpack?
I'm trying to remember exactly why I switched. It was seeing you have the Pelican, the Travel Air. Basically, you don't have to check it. Obviously, it's the Rolly style. It kind of, I don't know, it just made sense to me in that time where like I was getting sick of the backpack.
Mm-hmm. It was very protected. That's what I really liked about it. Because I remember like one of my like good shooting buddies, like he would always have his Pelican, and he could sit on it. And like that was like the one feature. I was like, you know what? Like I can't sit on my backpack. I like that as like an option, because oftentimes you find yourself in an airport or a situation where you could use a seat. So I think that's one reason why I gravitated toward the Pelican. But I often kind of found myself on shoots where I almost needed a backpack because with the Pelican, you can't really carry it around with you everywhere you go. So then I found myself gravitating back towards the backpack. And then I was able to find, it's a Think Tank backpack. It's the, I forget which one it is. It's one of their lighter weight backpacks, basically. So it's not a huge hulking backpack, which I used to have, like a low pro, like a really large backpack. It's the Backstory. That's what it's called.
Think Tank.
Yeah, Backstory 15.
And I guess to be clear, it's not that I would even go back to a backpack because I still use it. It's now just become my second case.
Right.
So my main case is the Pelican Travel Air, and my secondary case is a backpack. So on a bigger shoot where I need both sets of equipment, I have the backpack, which obviously is hands-free, and then I have the Rolly case. And I think the main thing about the Pelican that attracted me to it was those inserts. I forget what they're called, but there's a certain type.
Yeah, it's not the foam, the typical foam.
No, I hate the pick and
Velcro.
pluck. I don't want to do pick and pluck.
It's not pick and, I've
Terrible.
never liked pick and pluck.
Terrible. No, thank you on the pick and
you're
pluck.
not dealing with the Velcro. You're dealing with the other slotted ones where you cut to fit.
Cut it to fit, and then they just kind of go in with these pins. And that, to me, is a lot better than the foam, the padding, anything, because it's very rigid, very durable, but it's still soft enough that it's not going to break anything. The main reason, now that I'm thinking back to when I made this decision of why I wanted the Pelican as my A case. People talk about their A camera and their B camera, but no one talks about their A case and their B case.
I have 3 cases, and I label them accordingly. It's like my 1, 2, and 3 cases. Usually it's like photography, video, and then lenses.
Me, now it's my A case is my full frame Lumix kit. My backpack, my B case is my Micro Four Thirds Lumix kit. And the main reason was just I feel like showing up, especially the way that I shoot, that we shoot, it already kind of comes with the stigma of like not being professional, not being, and I didn't want to be like the dude with the backpack. I wanted to walk in with like, if you see a Pelican, that immediately is, you're doing something serious. And one person showing up with a small camera feels kind of rinky dink, but the moment you have the Pelican, it feels a little bit more professional. So it's kind of that client-facing aesthetic that I think is really nice and an easy way to add that value aside from having bigger cameras, bigger batteries, all the big stuff. I don't want a big, heavy stuff. I do want, the professional aesthetic. And I think the Pelican just does that. And then I still have the backpack that I use. So I didn't really get rid of one. I just kind of swapped what I put front and center.
Plus, it's the amount of built out your camera can be. So your camera is
That's the other thing.
Almost completely built out sitting in a Pelican because you have that much space to deal with. The only other bag I was considering for a while is it I think it's Sharp. Those it's like a, I don't know, more like cinema kit bags basically, but you can put like a fully assembled rig inside of one of those bags, and it kind of opens up like a doctor's bag. On top,
I've seen people doing that with the Home Depot like workman type bags. I forget which brand makes it. It's one of the
DeWalt.
DeWalt has
and it's very like sturdy. Bag basically, right? So ideally, you could just reach in, pull out at a fully assembled rig, but obviously it's a huge bag to deal with. So the Pelican gives you a little bit more room, especially the Air, because it's a little bit thinner. You can get thinner, padding as long as you're not throwing around your Pelican. You should be fine. But ideally, yeah, you have almost built out. And then what else do you have to add to it once you pull it out?
In terms of other stuff, or what do
Yeah,
you
like
mean?
how quickly can you get to shooting, basically?
So basically, my camera comes out of the kit with the LCD monitor attached. So the Shinobi's on top, that just folds flat. I need to put a battery on that with the new small rig batteries, those MPF ones with the USB-C port that we're both running now. And then I need to plug in the cables. So an HDMI cable, a USB-C cable. I grab a memory card, and I'm basically shooting.
Yeah.
I take off the lens hoodie cloth that I put on there.
And you
as well.
don't use like a handle.
No, I don't
You
use
go
the handle.
straight from like the cage to your LCD.
Yeah, I like having my hand on the grip. That photography way of shooting, of having every dial within fingers reach, is very nice to me. The top handle is maybe more comfortable for heavier cameras. I think the heavier your camera, the more you need that top handle, because it's hard to grip it. But mine is light enough that I can hold it like I'm shooting photos, but still shoot video, and
Do
I
you
get
ever
the same.
do, like low angle?
I do, but I'll just put my finger like kind of hooked on the
Like
LCD
around
mount, the monitor mount. I clip my finger to it and I'll do low. Or other times I'll just hold it with my other camera from the base. That's the other thing I have on my rig is that expander plate.
Yes.
You showed me those. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Just to be able to set down and have a sturdy base for the camera.
Yeah, originally it was like the Kessler Quick plate.
K plate, right? Is that what they call
Yeah,
it?
I think it was spelled weirdly. I think it was like KWIK.
Yeah.
Quick. But essentially, yeah, it's like like an Arca Swiss plate that has like 4 feet. So you mount it pretty much, to your camera or a cage, and then you could just like set it down, which previously I know a lot of people would put rails on their cameras so that they can like set it down. It won't, tilt and like either mess up your lens or anything like that. But Neewer came out with a better version of that plate, because one of the gripes you had with it was once you put that plate on, you could only mount it to like an Arca Swiss system. There was no like threaded screw mounts.
Yeah, no quarter 20.
Yeah, until Neewer came out with a version that had it, and then I immediately bought, again, which again was like one of the purposes of this podcast was like I don't typically get the newest thing that comes out, but I will get things if it's like, even if it's like a 1% upgrade, but it's that 1% where I'm like, that makes all the difference, right? So that plate was one of them where I was like, okay, they added that, quarter 20, whatever, the threads on the bottom, which makes it infinitely better, usability wise, especially with the tripods that we use, those slick tripods, because unfortunately that plate on that tripod head isn't typical either.
No,
it's like the
yeah.
round circular plates. So it's not,
But as far as tripod plates go, I think that is still my preference, is the circular plate.
It's easy.
Just twist the plate on.
Yeah.
I don't think I've actually preferred using Arca Swiss tripods.
But it does come in handy when it comes to like gimbals. For
Yeah,
instance. So like you can easily put it on a gimbal because, that's the kind of plate it's working with. The other thing was like the batteries. You showed me that battery solution, which previously I was not on board with the Anton Bauer
The Titan base, yeah.
base, because like the way I was like, traveling with my camera, I just didn't want that big of a battery. I was fine with swapping the small batteries, because the small batteries I could easily fit, in my bag, in my pockets, whatever.
Right, but then you had to run both batteries. You had to run the Lumix
Yes.
batteries and Sony
Plus
batteries.
so like the monitor batteries separately, right? And again, I was fine with it because I knew about how much time I had. It was about 2.5 hours or so, which each of those, and I was really good with powering down my monitor when I wasn't using the camera, so I was really good with that. But then you showed me this solution where you could power, from the monitor. You could just mount the battery, then you could, power the monitor and the camera. And I was like, oh my God. So now I have just 2 of those batteries. Didn't get rid of, I just stopped carrying, my 6 other batteries. I just have the 2 main ones, right? So that's, huge savings just in like not worrying if I left the battery on charge somewhere, right? It's like shows me how much percentage is. It's like all the benefits. So immediately I was like, that's an obvious purchase.
Obvious, easy buy.
So it's
Unfortunately,
like
they're more
things.
expensive now.
Are they? Oh,
Yeah.
Probably because we're hyping them up so much.
Well, when we bought them, I think they were just slightly above $60. I actually checked my Amazon receipt, and it was
You got to buy the goofy colors that nobody's buying, like the orange ones and the green ones.
No, I couldn't stand if I had
I might have bought the green ones.
Orange battery on
Orange was weird
on my monitor. But I checked after I made that recent video about those small rig MPF batteries, and now they're like $80.
Oh.
So they're creeping up there, and I
just
don't.
in time for the holidays, so they can mark it down.
Maybe
by 20%.
Maybe a good sale will come around. But I really like those, and it was an obvious. It's the benefits of the Titan base. One less cord to worry about. I'm not messing with DTAP anymore. The only downside, and someone did point this out, and it is a fair point of criticism, that by charging via USB-C, you lose recording out of USB-C. So if you wanted to record to an SSD, which you can do on some of the Lumix cameras, it's a fair thing, but we don't ever do that. No. So I'm never thinking, because in my mind, that's more stuff to add to the camera, and it's the simplicity, right? Less is more, almost always. The camera has recording built into it via SD cards. To add more to your kit and take away the functionality of the internal recording for the, quote unquote added benefits it's like that. Those are the incremental improvements that I think at the end of the day, you're adding more mental weight, fatigue of like stuff to remember, stuff to plug in, stuff to worry about on your rig, that completely detracts from the built-in features of the camera can record to an SD card. Yeah. And even on a lot of these cameras, they'll do internal ProRes. They'll do, some of them they won't do internal RAW, but they'll do like really good quality. Yeah, and people are still chasing the like, oh, but I got to record on an SSD for the ultimate quality. And I don't know what you're getting at that point.
I don't know who's recording at like with those features, because
some people are,
but nobody's making videos on it. It's like the people who are doing that, I wonder what kind of productions they're doing, because there's not many videos like that on YouTube. Not enough to make me want to go and purchase, those devices in order to do that workflow. Yeah. Like nobody's making the argument enough for me to be like, yeah, like that's an obvious buy, right?
I just don't know why I would throw away built-in SD recording or CF Express recording on like the GH7, for example. Why I would throw that away and opt for external SSD recording for, yes, there are some benefits, but arguably I'd say they're insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
I would rather power my camera all day long via the USB-C port than record SSD.
Okay. So going from the kit itself and how you transport it. So you talked about having a full frame kit and a Micro Four Thirds kit. So what goes into your decision-making process when it comes to, okay, this is a job for like a full frame camera versus
My preference now is the full frame S5 Mark II. It is cleaner in terms of image. It just is. The Micro Four Thirds stuff has that noise, that texture that's always been there. And you can grow to love it. And ultimately, it gets removed when you export through compression anyway. But when I'm looking at my timeline in Premiere and I'm editing my footage, I like how clean the full frame stuff is. And I have more ISO values that are usable, so I can go all the way up to 6400 and have like equivalent noise of what you'd get on Micro Four Thirds at 1600 ISO. So my ISO range is far, far expanded. So my default is the S5 Mark II. It doesn't overheat. It does everything I need. I have a decent enough lens kit now for full frame L mount that I'm never like, oh, I don't have the right lens. I bought the lenses I needed, which was a 20 mil. 1.4 and 85 1.4. Like I feel like those are the primes you need to have, the perfect wide and like the perfect portrait lens. And then the Sigma 28 to 70 f2.8. I wish it were a little wider. 28 is not my favorite for wide end, but it's fine. Well, it's probably another video I need to make of like the perfect full frame lens, because it doesn't exist for L mount. They do have that 28 to 45, but it's significantly more expensive. It's bigger, it's heavier, and 2.8 is already super shallow on full frame anyway, so I didn't really need the benefits there. I'd rather have the extra range. So my go-to is the full frame kit, which now just got added to with the S9. So I grabbed that because this is like, this is easy just to like
looking at it this morning,
slip it in there. I showed you some of the quirks with this lens, the 18 to 40. It's fun. But so that's my main kit. But however, I would pick the Micro Four Thirds kit in a situation where I need more usable open gate. So we were kind of talking about this earlier today. The 4x3 sensor is more square. You have more vertical pixels than full frame open gate, because the full frame sensor, at least on the S5 Mark II and the S9, is a 3x2 sensor. So open gate is 3x2, which is technically wider than it is tall, and 4x3 is like almost square, but still a little wider, but you have more vertical space. So open gate is a good reason to use Micro Four Thirds. Super telephoto reach, another good reason to use Micro Four Thirds. So I have tons of glass for Micro Four Thirds, really long lenses, beautiful lenses, the 50 to 200, awesome lens. So that would be a reason. And the third reason that I would still use Micro Four Thirds is I did get the XLR2 audio recorder for 32-bit float. So now my GH7 is basically my audio recorder, as well as my B camera. And unfortunately, I can't do that on the S5 Mark II. That won't do the 32-bit float. So the GH7 becomes the audio recorder, B camera. And if I'm running just a single camera, though, I'll go full frame and just do the audio the normal way. We've been doing it for 20 years or whatever. Like, I'm fine with 24-bit audio. The 32-bit, though, is nice when I want that safety net and I can afford to run 2 cameras on the shoot. And you've seen the crazy vest thing I built, which also works with those Sony NPF batteries. So I have the Sony NPF battery clipped on this side. This doesn't make any sense for anyone listening. I'll have to make a video at some point. But basically, being able to shoot 2 cameras all by yourself for like documentary style is, I think, actually a lot of fun. And some of those projects that are now fully edited it's indiscernible. You can't tell that one person shot it, I don't think.
No. And you might have photos of like your progression, because you were trying to solve this problem for a while. Shooting, 2 cameras, 1 person, right? So it's like
stacked on each other.
Yeah. So you had 2 cameras physically stacked on top of each other.
That works.
A wider angle and a tight shot, right? And then you switched to the Osmo.
I've done the Osmo,
The Osmo on the camera, which I've seen more people do. We were ahead of the curve on that one.
I think so, yeah.
And then now you're switching to like a vest. With a handheld. So separately, right?
Right. So if you have 2 cameras and they're small enough, you can stack them using the Arca Swiss plates, and it's really nice, really convenient, but it's ultimately fixed in your perspective. You point one, the other one points, and that's kind of annoying. You can work around it, but it's annoying. You also have the problem of like, do you want your wide on the top or do you want your wide on the bottom? And it depends on what you're focused on. If you're focused on people's faces, you put the portrait lens on top, the wide on the bottom, that's great. But if you're focused on action of what like people are doing with their hands, the portrait needs to go on the bottom. You can't easily reconfigure
because that rig works. We still kind of use it where it's like a person talking to camera. So when you're using tripod lockdown, very convenient, because your talent is essentially looking, at one camera or right in between them, because, you're stacking them very, close to each other, and it looks natural. So that's a very convenient, technique. Which
we've been doing, gosh.
We've been doing it a lot.
Almost 10 years now. We first started doing that with the Ursas. Where everyone, back in the day, people were talking about 4K, like you can just punch in and, you master it to 1080, you punch in, you get 2 camera angles in one. But the problem is you're literally not getting a different angle. You're just punching in. We shoot
and
with
it's not framed properly.
Right.
Because, framing for like a medium shot, very different from framing like a headshot, basically.
Right. The height of the camera is different, the angle, the tilt and everything. And it's super subtle. From the talent perspective, they have one eye line. And you can't tell which camera they're looking at, but you technically, by having 2 stacked the way we do, you get the benefits of actually having 2 cameras, but like the same eye line, which is, I don't know, just like the best thing ever compared to how many documentaries or pieces of content have we watched. And they're talking to the camera, and then it cuts to the side of their face.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh. No, you never establish an eye line and then cut to a camera looking at the side of their face. It's super strange.
It's either an interview where that person's just giving information and you're listening to them as they're talking to a producer.
Their eye line is at someone else off camera.
I'm listening to this conversation versus this person's addressing me by looking directly into the lens. It's like, okay.
So yes, that works, but it's fixed. The Osmo solution is good, and I think it does work, and I understand why people are using it. I found, though, there's a few reasons why it's not the best, and the setup I'm describing is you have your camera. So let's use the S5, for example. Let's say that's my main camera, and then you put the Osmo Pocket, to be specific, Pocket 3, because there's the Osmo Action, the Osmo, there's a few Osmo variants from DJI. The Osmo Pocket 3, it's the gimbal version that everyone's a fan of. Really cool. It does cool face tracking. It's got autofocus. It's got 10-bit color, 422. It does 4K. It does everything you could imagine. However,
Shoots log.
shoots log, D-log. Some problems though. The first problem, and I'd say is the biggest reason why I stopped using it for this purpose, is that controlling an S5, like a Lumix camera with an Osmo on top, I was doing a lot of managing of that Osmo in terms of like making sure it was doing what I wanted. Like the face tracking would get lost sometimes if they walked away, or like the framing would be goofy. It doesn't by default, like if it's your only camera you're operating, it's really easy and intuitive. But if it's your second camera that you kind of want on autopilot, it still needs a lot of like helping along the way. The other reason it's kind of annoying, you can set a custom white balance Kelvin, like you can dial in the number, but you can't tint green or magenta. And you can't actually take a picture white balance like what we do, where we'll walk into a room, set our white balance on all the cameras so everything matches. It doesn't matter the lens, it doesn't matter the camera, everything matches, but you can't do that on the Pocket 3. You can only tell it 5500, 5400, 5200. I'm like, this room is super green, I need magenta, and it won't let you do it.
Unless you shoot a plate.
But you can't shoot if you color in post. Yes. But I'm trying to get it right in camera, right? That's the other thing. And then matching the cameras is doable. You can do it, but it's extra steps. And I think in general, my mind kept gravitating towards it's always better. I have 2 Lumix, 3, 4. I have so many Lumix cameras. It'd be ideal if I could use 2 cameras that just match and have the same features from the start. The other thing, the final thing that was the final nail in the coffin for the Pocket 3, and it's not its fault, but it also overheats. If you're running with it all day, like I tend to shoot, it will overheat outdoors. And that's just super irritating when you're doing your thing and the sun happens to be out.
Well, especially if it's your B cam, like if you're second angle and it goes out, it's like, it's a lot of fun.
So there was enough reasons where it was becoming irritating. It's stuff you can work around, you can deal with it, but those are the things that I immediately find friction and I want to take away. How do I get rid of the friction? So that led me to, if I need to shoot with 2 cameras all by myself, I have a vest now where one can be mounted. And because these Lumix cameras have the phase detect autofocus with the wonderful face tracking in video, it solves that problem.
So which camera is on your person?
On the person is the GH7 because it technically can be smaller with a wider lens. So I use my 9mm. It's like a pancake lens on Micro Four Thirds, tiny, super lightweight. Pop the XLR2 on top for audio, and that's it. I don't need a monitor. I don't need anything else. It's just one little thing that kind of screws on this cool little mount on my chest. And basically, if I'm facing my subject, like it's a wide shot, it's going to be good. And then my hands, I can point my S5 any direction I want. And now it's this really convenient, easy way to just film. The only other person I see doing, it's totally different content. You know that channel, Peter Santinello on YouTube?
No. I thought you were going to say Fish Tank.
No. Peter Santinello, he's the guy that goes and like he'll go to the border and like hang out with the border guard for the whole day. Or he'll go to some...
I thought he shot with a GoPro.
No, he does. But it's that idea of like, I'm just going to have a camera on my body and talk to somebody while, they're walking and doing whatever. So it's this kind of hands-free, distraction-free method of filming. Granted, he's doing a GoPro or I think he's using a 360 camera. I'm looking at that going, I want better quality than that, but I want that same flexibility where I could just be talking to somebody, recording them down here, and then now I've got my beautiful camera for, I want to film their face, I want to film their hands, I can go anywhere I need to, and that has been actually like incredibly painless.
Is that the 50 to 100 or the 25 to 50 lens on that?
On
your handheld camera?
That'll be the full frame.
So
that would be the 28 to 70 Sigma 2.8. You could do it with like a portrait lens, like the 85, which would arguably look better, but you're stuck with a prime. So I opt for the zoom lens, and a 28 full frame still looks different enough than if I'm running the 9mm on Micro Four Thirds, because that equivalent would be 18 millimeters. What's cool about the Micro Four Thirds cameras and the Lumix cameras in general, another reason I just love them and I'm surprised they don't get more credit and they aren't more popular, the stabilization. So that GH7 on my chest, I can walk around and there's now the high stabilization. So you'll get a little bit of a crop.
Is
but
that separate from E stabilization?
it's beyond, yes. It's
It's
beyond.
It's a separate.
So the IBIS just works great in general, as you know. And then you go to the high stab, and that's even better. So it crops in. It's like, I think it's another like, gosh, if it's 9, it probably becomes, what's like, maybe like a 13 or something like that. But like Micro Four Thirds 13, so it'd be more like a 26. I don't know the exact crop factor at that point. Maybe it's like 2.5 instead of 2x, something like that. Crops in, and that gives you this like, I mean, you can like run, you can walk, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's really, really stable, and not in a goofy, warpy, jittery way. In a like, it just is stable. So I don't need to use that. In fact, most of the time I just use the basic IBIS.
Right.
But if you were concerned about, I'm not doing anything with the camera. Like, is it going to be stable enough? I'm walking around.
Conscious about how you're walking.
Yeah. You're doing the gliding feet.
Yeah.
Whatever you call that.
Yes.
Which I find, I think,
walk.
You ever notice someone who doesn't walk that way? Like, I feel like we walk that way in general. We kind of like glide, even without cameras.
What do you mean?
No. This is outside of production, right? You just walk through a space and you're just kind of, you're coasting.
I am very conscious about my footsteps.
Yes,
like
other people are not. They're like,
which I've always kind of been
banging through a room.
Because obviously, when you do production, it's like, all right, quiet on set. And then everyone's like, everyone freezes because, you hear every like creak. So yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've always been kind of conscious of my, how I move about spaces just because of production.
Yeah, and I think there's a way to move that you learn through camera operating without a gimbal to where you can be smooth and stable. And then it's funny when you give a camera to somebody who just walks regular and they're
ironically
shaking around just by walking.
I probably drive smoother too because like the ultimate arm, seeing like those like chase vehicles and everything, because I'll constantly be driving on the freeway and like, it'll be sunset and you see like a motorcycle coming in off of like an on-ramp and you're just like, damn, like that just looks so cool. But like you're maintaining speed. So it's like a perfect like tracking shot. And I'm like, man, if only I had the ultimate arm right now, like I'd be a great, driver for this. But that's like one of my goals, to drive a camera car at some point,
I'm sure it'll happen.
Not even operate the camera, just drive the vehicle of, an ultimate arm.
You are the getaway driver.
That'd be sweet.
It's in your.
But yeah, like being cautious with like even how you drive, because it's like, you don't want to hit a pothole or, take a turn too crazily. You just want to be
smooth.
Was
that was the stuff we were talking about today? Was there anything else that we were talking about? That was like a question or
Well, that was like kind of my main thing, was just I just thought it was funny how it's like we can be going down one path and then all of a sudden switch to something and then back to another without really skipping a beat, because again, going from like how I carry my equipment, simple as that, but it also is a big deal, especially when it comes to traveling or anything. Finding the right tool that might be like that 1% better, but it's like that 1% kind of means a lot, because obviously they're two cases. They do the same thing, just transports gear. But, considering the circumstances of, I don't want to put my bag down, so I want to carry it all day, whatever it is. A lot of traveling situations I'm in where I need my camera to be, or at least I want all my equipment with me, because I just feel less, paranoid if my camera's, somewhere. It's like, oh, don't worry, like if you go to a location and they'll say like, oh yeah, we'll just put it in the back room. I'm like, nah, I'd rather just hold on to it,
Yeah. Well, that was the thing for the Pelican, why I chose it, as opposed to one of those like carrying cases, duffel. Like it needs wheels. I think you need to be able to roll it with you.
Wheels, is a back saver. Like that was actually in the past when our gear was heavier. Like when we were carrying the Ursas with the batteries, that just was a pain to carry because it was so heavy. So ideally, you're working with camera systems now that are a lot lighter weight, that even a full backpack doesn't weigh more than, 20 pounds.
Yeah.
But
what's funny, we talked about it last time, I think, this case for hybrid production, shooting with less and kind of optimizing and streamlining. It's funny how the universe works. These patterns keep coming up because I was affirmed yet again that there's this bell curve of knowledge, experience, whatever it is. When you start off, you don't know anything, and all you see is what other people are doing, and so you kind of start learning based on what other people are doing. Over time, you get better and better and better. You find your own spin. You start learning and researching and realizing that there's even more expensive stuff you can get. There's even better ways to do it, and you keep chasing these higher highs, and ultimately you get to the top. And I feel like you don't stop there. I have passed. This is gonna sound terrible.
Yes, continue.
Okay.
You passed what now?
You pass it, and then you start coming back down and realizing how much you can get out of. Like if I was in construction, it might be just like a basic screwdriver. How much you don't even need the fancy equipment, just a basic drill, you know? Yeah. You don't need X, Y, and Z to do it, you know, even though it's the right tool or the best tool or the most expensive tool. You can end up being more productive with what I call kind of the Swiss Army knife gadgets, the Swiss Army knife mentality, these multi-tools where you only need the one thing and you can actually get everything done faster than having something super expensive that's, you know, at the end of the day, yes, it is the best on paper. The example I'm thinking of, the analogy, I'm good friends with a local baker who has started multiple bakeries around town. Started in his garage and started with like really humble baking equipment, your basic oven, your basic mixer, etc. And over time, as the bakery has been more and more successful, he's gotten more and more expensive equipment. And I was just talking to them the other day. They're like, yeah, there's some stuff that's like obviously like time saving in terms of the volume that we can bake, but there's certain things, an oven in particular, where they got the bigger, more expensive, better oven, and they're kind of like, well, like we actually kind of like the one that was in our garage because of these reasons. And it's not to say that it's better or worse, or you should obviously pick one or the other. It just comes down to that preference with experience. You get to that point where you've used the top tier stuff and you go, it's nice. Like the Ursa Mini, for example. It's a great camera. It's a beautiful camera. But there's friction there that for me, I'm sitting there going, well, shoot, the S5 Mark II.
It's really high maintenance.
It's,
you know, you're like,
like the picture quality is great.
Right.
It arguably is superior.
Oh yeah, the buttery imagery that you can get from an Ursa like looks so nice, and I miss it a lot. But I'm not about to carry it around anymore.
And I'm sure you can get those same benefits from the new Blackmagic Pixis or the Pocket Cam 6K or whatever it is. And if you want an Alexa 65 or you want a Red Komodo or you want whatever, it doesn't matter. But there is a thing that happens over time. You use enough equipment and you realize this is the tool for me. And it's different for everybody. That is true. I'm not saying me shooting with the S5 Mark II is what everyone should do. But I'm just surprised that more people don't embrace that level of production. And they opt for the more expensive, bigger, bulkier, heavier stuff that takes longer to set up. And I go, all right, whatever floats your boat. I pull it out of my Pelican case and I start shooting right away. Here we go. Today, you were shooting video with the GH6, just rigged out, ready to go, the way you have it. I'm snapping photos with the S9. It couldn't have been easier, and like the stuff looks great.
Super quick. It's already delivered. Shot it and delivered within
a day,
3 hours, 4 hours.
And could you imagine if it was, hey, I need to rig out my, Ursa Mini, got to build the kit. Oh, hold on, let me set up all my super expensive, heavy production equipment. Let me drive the grip van in. You can do it that way.
It's a different world of production, like entirely. The people I know who use that gear, everything's more formal. There's a producer, there's always a producer, there's always middlemen, and it's always a much larger shoot than it needs to be or ought to be. But at the same time, it's like your preference of how you want to do business, I guess. Because we opt for more control, like self-control over the entire project, which allows us like creative freedom. And that's something that we value more, than the traditional way of doing production, I guess. Like doing commercial shoots. Like I don't want to do commercial shoots because it just seems like a huge pain. Like all day to shoot 30 seconds. Like doesn't sound fun to me.
And we have done that. So
oh yeah, we've done that. Not fun. It's like I'd rather spend a day and come out with like a documentary. Like that's impressive to me. That's impressive. And I learned a lot, not just yeah, that cheese looks great for that one shot, that 2 second shot, you know, that cheese pull. It's like, okay.
Yeah, the spending time chasing perfection, because in the commercial world, that's what it is. It's everything needs to be perfect, which there's value to chasing perfection. We talk about it a lot, trying to be perfect. But when you're not making art, when you're not telling a story, when you're not making content people even want to watch, commercials are what people skip.
Yeah, right.
So you're spending days, a day at least, days making something perfect to ultimately churn out something that everyone wants to skip.
Yes.
There's nothing in that sounds fulfilling or rewarding. And I think that's why a lot of people get burnt out, because they feel like that's where the money is, or they have to do it because that's the biz.
Yeah.
And you can pat yourself on the back. You can be proud of your visuals. Like, it's incredible what I did. My color was perfect. My exposure, look at those gradients. Oh, mwah. But if you show it to someone else and they go, skip, I want to watch the real thing.
Yeah.
And the real thing is a Mr. Beast video, or the real thing is pick your favorite YouTuber who just shot it on their phone.
Right. That being said,
I think that drives anyone mad.
Yeah. Like, that drives me nuts. I would love the podcast where, you know, it's just interviewing the people who do chase visual perfection. It's like, that's interesting to me. Not the actual commercial itself. I'm like, my interest is your passion, you know?
Yeah, that's cool. There is something rewarding about creating beautiful images. Like, fundamentally, it is just satisfying. But you always want it to have a little bit more purpose than that, I think.
Ideally.
I think human beings want a little bit more.
They want, story is everything, right?
It's just something people want. I was just watching Die Hard. Okay, it's Christmas time.
Best Christmas movie.
Gotta watch a Christmas movie, Die Hard. My wife had never seen it. I've only seen it once or twice. It's not my favorite film by any means, but it's something that you start watching it, and it's pretty slow at the beginning.
Yes.
It's doesn't hook you right away, but once you gets going,
yeah, it's like an avalanche.
There's really good characters, really good plotting happening, and it's just fun to watch. And is every shot perfect? I don't know how hard they tried on it. But it's entertaining. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was stuff they were doing where, you know, nowadays some of the green screening's not perfect, but there's other stuff that's really impressive. Some of the explosions are quite satisfying. I just think there's something to that. You just do your best. You try as hard as you can, but it's about making something compelling that people are going to want to watch. Die Hard came out 30 years ago, more than that now. I don't know what the exact math is, but it's old.
Right.
And people are still, I can't wait to watch Die Hard. Yeah. And I'm in that same boat. I watch the Santa Claus every year.
Oh yeah, it's a great movie. Why? Because it looks great?
No, because it's compelling, and it doesn't look bad.
Yeah.
It sounds decent. It looks good. It's not terrible.
I mean, I do think it's fun to watch old movies and like see how they shot it. You know, like Casino, for example. It's like you watch it and you're like, okay, what was the framing like in that era of filmmaking, kind of thing? Because I wonder, like, now when people watch those films, they look at the film grain and they're like, ooh, the texture, oh, it looks so good, right? Oh, the dynamic range or whatever.
If you can even see it on streaming, all of it's compressed, now, it's blocks.
But, you know, like looking at a film and looking at it that way versus, like, I guess back in the day when all film was like that, no one
it just all had texture.
It just all, that's what it was. So I wonder if they probably looked at it and thought differently, like, I would have framed that differently. You know, it's like, I wonder if the conversations weren't even obviously about the texture and film grain and everything.
Yeah, because it just of course not.
Yeah. Which is something that is like tacked on to what we do when you're talking about like the Micro Four Thirds having that like look to it. Meanwhile, I know younger, you know, filmmakers nowadays who are like, ooh, that's vintage, you know, like they're shooting on like VHS, you know, camcorders, you know, mic, you know, all the way, you know, they have a way that you can shoot it on SD basically, but you have to get a whole bunch of different cords and adapters. But that's like that vintage like camcorder look like is so desired right now.
There's something satisfying. We did it. Gosh, when did we do that HVX video? That was earlier this year for April Fools.
Yes. Yeah.
But that servo zoom, that's a look. That's a vibe. Having a servo zoom, just doing the slow, and you're just moving the camera as it's zooming in and out. Mm-hmm. I could easily see that making a comeback stylistically.
Yes.
In a way that you would never, you just even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, ooh, that's a camcorder, gross.
Yeah.
Now, oh, that's cool. I mean, why guys shoot on prime lenses? That's stupid. Look at this.
Lame. Yeah.
Zooming in.
Yeah, so many people like you were talking about this morning, like the Cook look, and like how much you hate people who say like the Cook look or something.
The Fuji look.
Yeah.
The Cook look.
Because
What does it look like? Describe it. Tell me what the Fuji
Cook
look
look?
is. Yeah, what's the Cook look?
not sharp, like
Cool.
slightly.
It has
out of
the
focus.
buttery. It's buttery. What does that mean? Describe it.
It looks
You can't describe it. It just has the look.
inaccurate. Cook look looks like someone breathe, like just someone breathed on your lens.
People trying to do the Fuji film emulations. Ooh, it's got the Fuji look. You can't possibly capture this any other way. You can 100% capture it on any other camera. It's just your color.
Yeah.
It's
texture,
got a look. What's the look? Tell me what the look is. It's their proprietary film emulation technology.
Texture in the highlights. That's what it is.
If you can't describe, the anamorphic is a look because people can describe it. They can tell you what it visually looks like. Oh, I like the flaring. I like the barrel distortion. I like the compression. I like how my field of view is twice as wide, horizontally than it is vertical. There is an aesthetic. The bokeh is not spherical. It's oval bokeh. They're describing what the anamorphic look is, and I can go, okay, cool. We can document this. We can write it down.
Cook just has its own. That's just it. It's Cook. That's what it looks like. It looks like Cook. There's only one thing that looks like it.
Yeah, same thing with Fuji. Cook. No, there's even people geek out about Lumix skin tones
Leica. People geek
Leica.
about Leica.
Yeah, there's all this stuff people freak out about, and then they can't accurately describe it, and it's oh gosh, it's a cult-like or religious belief. It's faith of what they're buying
it's
into.
Financial investment. Yeah.
It's delusion, I think.
Well, it's because you're doubling down on your belief, right? It's like, no, I made this purchase, therefore it was a good decision. This is the best. Sony's the best. Canon's the best. Nikon is the best.
You can have a preference for things, and certain things make things easier.
I think people just don't want to sell their gear, and then they just devote their whole being to one brand.
I think they catch on, and it's what everyone just repeats. It becomes the thing that is chanted or described. Fuji has a look. Everyone just says that.
That's just marketing? You think Fuji?
Well, no.
big Fuji?
I don't think it was necessarily planned. I think a couple people said it, and then everyone else just tacked on. And you'll see different groups on different forums or wherever you're looking on YouTube channels in the comments. Some people, Canon always gets the skin tones right. And then a totally other group of people will be, Sony always gets the skin tones right. And then another group of people, Lumix always gets the skin tones right. Canon and Sony has green skin tones. Canon, the color science, their color science is superior. Yeah. What are you talking about? Because you can do this on any camera, and at the end of the day, you just get one of those chip charts.
Right, and then you just adjust it real quick.
Just boop, 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 boop. Yeah. There's nothing secret. There's no magical, like, you can't get the Canon look on a Sony.
Well, so, yeah, bringing up the, what's that software that you were using to make a certain profile look like a log profile look like another one?
That's some next level stuff.
Yeah. What came in handy with your Osmo rig that you were talking about earlier, and then even more handy recently when I was shooting with my DJI Mini 3 Pro camera.
Yeah, which combination of words go together.
And then you matched it with your Mavic 3?
I converted it to GH6, actually.
Okay, yeah.
That's
so
what
that process.
So Cinematch is the plugin, which I'm sure people have probably heard about if you're into filmmaking and YouTube content creation, that sort of thing. Cinematch has sponsored a bunch of other people's stuff, and I ended up wanting to just like test it out. I thought, people keep talking about that color matching is kind of a pain. It's very tedious. You can do it, but if there's something a plugin that'll make it easier, it's worth a shot. I think it's $100, and it's like a one-time thing. You're not subscribing, so I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And what's cool about Cinematch is that you can convert different cameras in their color spaces to other cameras in their color spaces. a lot of people I think would use this to convert like log to Rec 709 or something like that. But I've been using it for log to log conversions, that's where I find it the most useful. And what's extra cool about Cinematch is that you can save those conversions as cube files.
Nice.
So you can give it and share it to somebody else, the cube file, the LUT, and they don't need the plugin at all.
Yeah.
So what we were doing, you had shot in D-Cinelike. That was the color profile on the DJI Mini 3 Pro. D-Cinelike, because it doesn't have D-Log. Is that why? No D-Log on there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're shooting D-Cinelike, which looks different than D-Log.
Okay.
Because D-Log is different.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's why when we were trying to use the normal LUT, it just didn't look right.
Didn't match
it looked bad.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, this is D-Cinelike. So Cinematch has that. It has the Mini 3 Pro in there. And I said, convert that to all the different variants of Lumix. So there's GH6, S5 Mark II. There's a few other Lumix ones. And they've even got HLG. They've got Cinelike D, Cinelike V. But Vlog is what we do as kind of our standard. So I converted D-Cinelike to Vlog, GH6 specifically, and threw that under our LUT. And it looked gorgeous. Like the camera that otherwise was kind of frustrating, kind of a pain to work with. We're like, this color is like...
I had made my own LUT for that specific camera.
Which took you how long, probably?
I mean, it took me maybe like an hour to do that in general, because I literally took that chip chart, put it outside, flew my drone over the chip chart, which I didn't have to do, but I just did it anyway. Did that, like took a screenshot, took it into Premiere, like did the whole
Did
deal.
all your adjustments manually, yeah.
But it ended up being like a point of frustration, because that was on like my machine, and then when you opened it up on your machine, it just gave you a whole bunch of issues.
Yeah, Adobe freaked out and said, I don't know where this cube file is, and I don't know what happened, but then the LUT ended up getting doubled up as like on the clip, and like you're modifying the color, how you interpret the color, but then also in the Lumetri panel, so it was like doing the LUT twice. Super annoying, super irritating.
Yeah.
And what we ended up figuring out was we can do this one-click Cinematch and make a cube file that just converts it straight to Vlog. So it's as if it visually looked like we were flying a GH6 on a drone.
Nice. Yeah.
In Vlog.
I was very impressed with how it made it look. It made it look like it had more dynamic range.
Right.
Which I was like, that blew me away. I was like,
that looks really good. So it's a very cool tool. This is not sponsored, although it probably should be, but very helpful for those times where you're trying to match different cameras. And I find, you don't want to convert everything necessarily to Rec 709, because once you lose the color in that interpretation, it's harder to color after the fact.
Yeah.
You convert everything to a standard log. In our case, it's Vlog, but you could pick any log profile. It could be C-Log, S-Log, F-Log, N-Log. There's so many logs now. We use Vlog. That's the Lumix one. V for VariCam. And you convert everything to that, and then you have one adjustment layer over everything. You can make tweaks per clip for color balance, for exposure. It's a very smooth, easy way to edit, to color, and make things look really, really good in seconds.
Yeah. And I don't know if maybe people don't know, because I didn't know this, but in Premiere, the way we do our color, we'll have like our typical timeline where we have all of our edits and everything, and we don't apply the LUT to those individual clips.
No.
We have, our A camera on one track, B camera on another track, the B-roll on the third track, and then maybe a blank layer on the fourth track, just in case. I don't know, who knows.
Safety track.
Yeah, safety track. But we have like a LUT layer that's just an adjustment track, or adjustment layer on its own track that we apply the LUT to, and then we just lock it, and then everything underneath. As far as like adjusting color, if you adjust the color on that adjustment layer track, you for some reason don't get as much like bandwidth with like what the colors that you're playing with. For some reason, if you adjust the track, like the actual clip under the adjustment layer, you get like more, like you can be more specific with the way you color your footage.
Yeah, which has been super annoying to me. The way Lumetri is built, it has a lot of the first things you see in Lumetri are your tint, your white balance, cooler, warmer, green, magenta, exposure controls, and all of that doesn't really work that well if your footage is already Rec 709. So back in the day, we were shooting Cinelike V. That's a Rec 709 color profile. You'd tint it warm and it would like the highlights would be
Yeah,
yellow,
just
like everything's just
would
warm.
just go warm.
Or
real
you
quick.
tend to blue and everything's blue and it looks amateur, it looks bad. And so we ended up using curves to keep the white point and the black point. That's a good workaround. But what ends up being really helpful for the tint sliders is when you're doing that on log footage. So it's not Rec 709 yet. And if you actually look at the log footage when you're changing exposure or contrast or your white balance with those sliders, the profile log is so flat, it's so desaturated that when you're adding, 3 here or 5 there, visually not a lot's happening.
Right.
If you just look at it uncolored. The moment you put the LUT after that, so you do all your color adjustments and then the LUT is happening after, so it's second in chain. It's probably a lot easier in Resolve, honestly, with those nodes, because you're visually seeing it. But Premiere, it has a similar mentality where you're doing those color adjustments first on your log footage, and then your LUT is applied as second after the fact with that adjustment layer.
Yeah.
And you get, it's almost like you're shooting raw.
Yeah, it was surprising.
And we're shooting H.264 10-bit 422. So we don't have, all the possible dynamic range or all the possible color, but usually we're close enough, and any small adjustments, I mean, I'm +2 warm, -1 on the green or whatever, and it looks incredible. Even stuff that's shot fairly off, where I'm adjusting, 10 or 20 points on those scales, still comes back, which would be impossible if it was Rec 709. So getting those orders right of where the LUT is, if you're doing that LUT conversion first, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, and you're definitely shooting yourself in the foot.
Locking it in.
You're locking that bacon in that color, and then you're trying to fight with it later. Yeah. And that's the beauty, the devil of color, is that so many people they make a change at the top, and then 10 steps later they're fighting something they did to themselves earlier, wasting hours.
Yep.
When a lot of it is a lot simpler than it might first appear. You just got to make sure you get your order of operations right, and then you can get the full benefits of it, which are, I think really impressive.
Yeah.
And for how fast we're able to do it.
Yeah. In the past, like you were saying, adjusting the warmth or cold, it would just ruin the footage. But I mean, I enjoy now having a monitor that gives me those waveforms as well, because also like our exposure, because exposure can obviously affect it as well, but our exposure, I don't think we've ever really gotten out of like maybe 0.5 exposure, like an increase or decrease. We might be slightly over, slightly underexposed, but yeah, it's getting it as close to perfect as possible in camera. You should be pretty fine.
Yeah, and then just setting your project up, the not the right way. There's a lot of ways to do it, but there's a lot of ways to do it that will cost you so much time later. You mentioned, the way I was taught in Final Cut 7 20 years ago, you color on your clips. You do your three-way color corrector was the cool thing back then. And you're coloring your clips, and people pick up these habits, or they watch a YouTube tutorial and they learn how to do something, and they just keep doing it that way.
Oh, I have cold shadows and warm highlights.
And they say, you do all your color, and then you realize, oops, I want to change something, and I want to change it globally. Like all these need more of a vignette, or they need less sharpening, or they need everything needs to be warmer. All right, well, I'm going to remove all my attributes and then paste all my attributes, but that ruins it because there were certain clips that had special adjustments. When you're coloring on the clip for things that are global, vignette, sharpening, the color grade, because there's a difference between the color correction and the color grading. Color correction should happen on the clip. Every clip, the white balance could be slightly wrong, the exposure could be slightly wrong, the contrast, maybe you're getting some flaring. So your color correcting happens on the clip level, but anything global, the LUT, the look, the vibe, all that can happen on one global adjustment layer. Yeah. And that way saves you, 100 clicks.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're never worried about consistency of making, does everything have the same amount of vignetting? Does everything have the same amount of, hue transformation, saturation? Yeah. You just do it all in one adjustment layer over everything, just one layer. You can put your color right on the source. You can use that same layer across every single sequence. So say you had 10 sequences in Premiere. If your color is on the source of that adjustment layer, any adjustment, you can, in one click, shift everything warm across 10 different timelines.
Something that we haven't done, should we do it, now that we have the ability to import LUTs, should we save the LUT with that adjustment? Because we make that like skin tone adjustment every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Should we just make a new LUT and like that's just the new LUT?
In the monitor?
Well, I mean, yeah, kind of.
Oh, or saying a new cube file.
New cube file.
That is the new base.
Into the
Yes and no. I'm afraid of baking too much custom stuff in because then you may end up fighting with yourself
saying,
later.
Like, I'm gonna make a LUT for myself.
Sure. Yeah, you should just to watch it.
Like, wow, this looks great.
Look at it at its best. I think I'm very skeptical of Rec 709 conversions that are
nothing baked in.
Some random Joe Blow guys.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the best way to convert Vlog to Rec 709.
Right.
I just say I'm gonna stick with the Panasonic one.
I guess that would be a little much, having the LUT that you're baking into your footage, like the actual footage timeline. Of,
you
like,
could
use
definitely
this
do it
file instead. And
right.
You don't know.
You don't know. Yeah, you
that'd
don't
be
know. Because then you may end up counteracting, trying to fight it later.
Although that's how LUTs work anyway. Yeah. People usually bring in somebody's LUT and like, this is the one. They don't even know.
And I don't trust that. I say if it came from Panasonic, if it came from Sony, if it came from Canon, I'm going to trust their team of engineers.
Why though?
Way
because
more
it's
than
not
some
correct.
stranger.
Do they know it's not right? Because it's not.
It's not. It's not.
Or like, who are they going off of though too?
I don't know.
Because I had it in my pocket, so I might as well bring it out. This
is
the
I'm glad you had that.
This is the Color Passport color checker.
Video specifically.
Yeah.
That's the video one.
So as you can see, it has 2 ways of opening. This is white balance. Then we got our actual color chart here, along with, exposure chart. So ideally, you expose correctly, right? This gray portion should be around like 40% IRE, between 40 and 50, ideally. But these are the 2 lines that you want to focus on. So a lot of times what we'll do is, as long as the light isn't directly shining into this, because what you don't want to do is shoot the reflection of light into this. You want to, like, ideally, it's a matte finish on these little chips, so you want to make sure that the color's not being affected by a reflection. But ideally, you mask around just that area, and then on your scopes, you should be able to pinpoint those colors and drag them into the correct, those corresponding boxes. And then that little line that you'll see, that's
skin tone
line.
The skin tone line.
And then you can adjust the hue on just those, like that orangey, brownish portion, then make it perfect.
We should do a tutorial next week. I have it on my list of things because I think that's something that you've really streamlined how we do color.
I love this thing so much.
And I think that you had to cobble together a few different tutorials to really get the most out of that and how we actually do it now.
Yeah. I mean, I think Caleb Pike has, I mentioned him a few times, but he does a really good job of describing exactly how to use it. And that was basically what he did in his video. But yeah, like I don't really see anyone doing it. And when it comes to food content specifically, like we mentioned, like this thing is so helpful. It makes...
I think it's overwhelming. It's so technical. It's the
you have to remember to do it too. Like
you have to remember to do it. And I think people are very intimidated by IRE.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a vector scope. You have to know how all of these tools work and how to use them together in a way that is actually very easy. I think it is super easy.
It's
to the point where it takes you minutes.
If you're driving yourself mad trying to get perfect color, like you dive into trying to find the solution, and then once you find the solution, it's obviously a process. But doing it,
but it is really easy.
It is easy. Like once you know about it, it's super easy. But yeah, let's do a tutorial because I think it'll blow people's minds. Because once we started using it, all of a sudden bread looked like bread. It's like, okay, brown doesn't have to look green.
Mm-hmm. And it's especially important for when you're shooting log.
Yes.
To make sure that and then you can check those LUTs and make sure that those conversions are right or they're doing what you want. Because you can shoot with a proper white balance, a proper exposure in log, put a LUT on it, and it will look not the best.
Not accurate, yeah.
Not the best. And so you have to then trust, if you're not going to do it yourself, you trust someone else. Like, I've got the best LUTs.
Yeah.
Come buy my LUTs. They're only $100 on sale Black Friday. And you're using some other guy random LUTs, and they don't work either. And you're pulling your hair out going, why does this color not look right?
Yeah.
I'm shooting log. I'm getting my white balance right. I'm getting my exposure right. I'm putting the LUT on there, and it still looks wrong.
Yeah, and it could also be your monitor.
That could be too.
Well. So, like, just knowing how to use your scopes, like, that's probably most important. Because I think for a while, like, I was trying to convince you in, like, the beginning, it was years ago, I was like, dude, this monitor, like, it's really nice. Like, you should like, check it out. It's got the waveforms.
I still don't use the scopes.
Well, I mean, but it's nice to have. Like, it's at your fingertips. Like,
it is nice.
If you wanted to use because I don't use the scopes on that thing. I actually do. Yes, I do. If I'm ever shooting, like, in an oven, I will bring it up because you can dial down, like, if you're not shooting in log, for instance, because sometimes we shoot, like, in the standard profile just for convenience. But it's really easy to clip your saturation.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll look at, like, literally the vector scope in there just to see where my saturation's, like, at. And in an oven, sometimes it'll have a really warm light that's beyond orange. So I'll, like, have to knock it down by -2, let's say, just to bring that saturation in a realm where it's not going to, like, on the viewer's end, it's not just going to look like it just something wrong happened to it. You know how colors can look when they're overblown. It just looks like a blotch of that one color.
Yes, yeah.
So there's no, like, even gradient into that color. It's just one color orange that looks gross. But yeah, I don't know.
Next week. Let's do a tutorial or something.
Let's do it.
Something that makes it easy and intuitive for people, that doesn't scare them away thinking, oh, I've got to worry about these 10 extra steps. It's really, like, nothing to worry about. Just making sure you do a couple things.
Yeah.
And you can go from, which I will say is people, how do I say this? One of the most common problems I see in video content in general is just bad color.
Yeah. Something that you can fix.
Because it should be easier. It really should. But it's so easy to get it wrong. And getting it right takes very specific knowledge that not a lot of people are exposed to.
Yeah. And some people just think it's buying a new camera. It's like,
yeah.
like, it looks bad because I'm shooting Micro Four Thirds. It's like, oh, if I had a Sony.
If I had red, if it was raw,
if it was raw,
it would look better. And go, nope.
Yeah.
It will give you different tools that can make it.
I've seen horrible red footage.
Yeah.
It's
also easy to mess it up.
Yeah.
So we'll put together, I think, a fun tutorial on that, because I had a couple ideas of how we could do that using the cameras that we got around here.
I think specifically setting up a food scenario like we usually do.
Yeah.
And something that's completely controlled that somebody could easily replicate. Because that's the thing where I'm like, a lot of these tutorials I see, like, it's something that, like, I can't easily replicate because they're either, like, on like an actual, like, film shoot with tools that, like, I'm not, like, I don't use.
Yeah.
Right. So
or it's like a car or something.
Yeah, something easy, something, I don't know, that anyone could do.